Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Crissy here from CS2. Today, I have a special guest. I have Charlie back on the podcast. So we just did a big run of amazing guests on the Forward Thinking Podcast, but we wanted to go back to, sharing CS2's tips and tricks and really helping you marketing ops folks out there who are looking to get, specific experience that you can take into your jobs. And we do a lot of great things for clients. And so we just want to go back to kind of sharing some of those. So today we're going to actually be going through a case study on how to use insights from your lead scoring model to improve your conversion rates. And why it really should be like an iterative process to help you better improve your customer experience, but also how to better convert leads through the funnel. So Charlie's going to be diving into that with me. But first of all, welcome back, Charlie.
Thank you for having me again. When was the last time I was on? It's been a few months, I think.
Yeah, we did some of the rethinking episodes in July, but I feel like that was a bit different. This is your full length episode in
I know.
a really long time. Don't be nervous. Yeah. Okay, so let's just dive into it. So what do you want to know, Charlie? Or where should we dive in first?
I think giving a high level overview, and also what are we going to call the client to obscure the real name? Just client X?
Yeah, client Layla. I have our dog Layla next to me. We'll just say the client. So we're gonna not say our client's name just for privacy and everything. So if those of you if you're wondering why they keep saying client or client X, it's just we want to keep that anonymized. So, but yeah, I'll kick it off with some background. So. For this client, they're actually one of our biggest clients, which is why I'm more intimately kind of close to what's going on with this project. But they have a business model where they have 3 different business units, and CS2 actually helped them with a scoring model for all 3 of them to help better drive their MQLs through the funnel. And previously, before working with CS2, they were very MQL focused. So they're always had MQL goals, very much measured on volume. And we did a lot of insights at the beginning to kind of show why, that wasn't working. Their conversion rates were super low, like 2%, 3% from MQL to SAL. And really we thought, okay, instead of being measured on volume, because marketing was, hitting their goals, and they would call it a day. But really we're like, okay, to actually see improvements and get better alignment with the SDR team, we want to have a conversion rate goal. And so what we did was we did some modeling to look into the data to then actually improve those rates. So even up front, we're able to kind of test out the model in some test fields and then actually see, okay, based on these ranges, we can actually hit this goal of 18%, which for them was huge improvement. And then hopefully get better than that. So that was overall. With that, it's been a very iterative process. We always go back and review the data again and see by lead grade or lead matrix score, like an A1, B1, all that. What are our conversion rates per, level, and then are we making our goals, or what are we seeing in the data that we can then improve the conversion rate even more. And so we do that quarterly, which I highly suggest for folks. A lot of the times in mobs, we just deliver something, we just call it a day. But lead scoring or any type of model that you're using to deliver leads to sales, really should be iterative. You should be looking into it, into seeing how you can better improve so you can eke out more pipeline.
So I think one of the first questions I want to dive into here is around how you built their business case, or at least helped facilitate the change around just being hyper focused on MQLs and starting to focus on conversion rates and pipeline. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people probably listening to this want to do that. Many are on that journey right now, and it can be a tough one if the business has had that MQL addiction.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a series of events during the time. So at the time, I had worked with our main point of contact there, who we have a great relationship with, and was kind of would show the data to then make the business case. And then she did. She actually like took that to her executives to say, "Hey, this is not working. We're meeting our MQL goals on the marketing side." And then they're kind of just like stop, like even from a marketing perspective, they'll have this huge surge in activity, and they're kind of trailing down because they would hit their MQL goals and be like, we're done here. And
My
it's
job
really
here is done.
right. And then there's a disconnect then when uh, our point of contact then really supported the SDR team because she was more in a RevOps role. And they were saying, our conversion rate is terrible. We're sending, we even saw in the data, they're sending back a ton of leads. They're disqualifying a lot. Even down to like a channel like content syndication. This is like, these aren't MQLs, and we actually just stopped scoring those in general. But so taking that data, also one thing that was very lucky is around that time, CS2, we were filming podcasts about why you shouldn't be measured on volume. And so she's actually able to take those episodes and like share it with her team and share it with like the VPs on her team. So I will say that was like kind of nice because it just further proved like, our business case. And then at the same time, I think in general, a lot of people are talking about it. So the data analysts at the company actually did some modeling too to just show how the conversion rate was just really low. And then also that if they were going to meet their pipeline goals that they needed, they are a public company. So meeting their pipeline and revenue goals, the revenue goals especially, right, is super important for them. They have earnings calls, like they need to make sure they're tracking to their growth. So really that then further facilitated that, and we were able to do it.
Yeah, I think one actionable thing that we talk about quite a bit at CS2 is trying to split the funnel, or at least look at MQLs in different categories, right? So like you could have an MQL type, or like a hand raiser MQL, or versus not hand raiser MQL. And if you're able to track that within your lifecycle data, to be able to see, okay, what is the conversion rate between those that are reaching out that are genuinely interested and they've declared intent through like a contact us form or a demo form, versus those who haven't declared intent, they've just engaged with some stuff and we just think they're ready. And if you document kind of how they entered that sales process, and then track the conversion rates for each of those, you can see quite obvious patterns in the data that can then build that business case to be able to like turn off or at least optimize what you're doing for the non-declared intent. But actually, we've got some interesting things to talk about even for the contact sales that we'll get into in a bit. And I think the other point that I think is important to make here is, in this time of economic uncertainty and budgets being cut, it might be harder to just fill the funnel with just more and more leads, right? And if your conversion rates are low and you're looking through your reverse waterfall analysis and you have to just stuff a load at the top to meet your goals at the end because your conversion rates are so low, that's going to be harder and harder because it's going to be harder to pay for all those leads. So why not try and optimize the funnel through the stages and have better conversion rates? And that gets you the same end goal without having to just stuff the top full of leads, and then having a lot of inefficiencies through the process, like wasting a lot of sales time and SDR's time, and you're paying for that time too.
Right. You bring up a good point too around being able to dive into the type of MQL. And that's a big point for this scoring model. I kind of glazed over it, but for a lot of times, a very basic traditional scoring model will just score things and then put it into one field. And that doesn't really like get you much detail. We had a mix of demographic scoring and behavior scoring, and we created thresholds for each. So, and then each, like for demographics, each threshold of score had a letter tied to it. It's like A, B, C, D. And then for activity, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. We actually did 5 for people who didn't even hit our minimum threshold, which wasn't 0, by the way. So, but the benefit of doing that is that we also knew ones were likely like contact sales, because the threshold for behavior to hit that was basically doing a contact sales or demo request activity. And then everything else was kind of based on score, and we knew we didn't want a download to be even MQLable, so we hit a minimum threshold. So, but the breaking the leads out into those levels and also being able to stamp what the grade was, not all grades MQL, but be able to stamp that on the campaign member where we were tracking the funnel, made it really easy. So we tracked the funnel on the campaign member. This client uses Full Circle Insights, but being able to do that and also create a custom field where we stamp what the grade was, after a quarter or after a certain amount of time, we'd actually see, okay, this MQL tied to this campaign type with this lead grade had this conversion rate. And we could actually track, okay, what are our volumes? What is the conversion rate just down through the funnel? So I want to make that really clear for folks, because that's actually a great way to track to get data that you need. Like, scoring is great for sending leads over to sales, but actually it's even better for getting these insights into, like, should we even send any leads besides demo requests to sales? Like, what's the conversion rate for everyone else that has those other behavior score thresholds? And then it also just tells you, okay, if certain lead grades, like a C, a B4, if that has a very low conversion rate, don't MQL it. And then that'll improve it, and you can actually then improve your conversion rate even more. So I just wanted to make that clear for folks, like having that granularity and being able to see those levels just makes it much easier to really pinpoint and measure your model more effectively.
So what were you seeing in the data? So I know when we were talking about this before, there were some kind of quite obvious patterns that were helping you make some of those decisions on how to improve.
Yeah. So we definitely saw so even before we set our ranges, we kind of looked into the model, and we saw that the conversion rate for leads that were just doing a download or a contentation was super low. So we actually removed that. So we even stopped scoring for it. And then we saw certain demographics had a higher propensity to SAL, so certain decision maker titles, certain industries, and so forth. So we built our model around that, and we were able to actually project that, okay, we think with this that our conversion rate will be 18%. The goals were lower than that because they actually started off with moderate goals, but we wanted to try and get above that goal. And actually, so going back to where we actually saw the better insights is once the model is live. And so we went back to that and looked at it after 3 months, and we saw some really interesting things. And we continue to 6 to 8 months later. And it's starting to take shape even more now that we've had a longer time for those leads to go through the funnel. So I want to focus on what we're seeing now, because I think it's actually really interesting than what we first saw before we even turn on the model. So what we're seeing now is the model is really showing that by far the best converting leads are from demo requests and contact sales, by
which
far.
Is obvious. Which
it's obvious, right? We talk about that, right? But then the nice thing is having data to actually prove that, right? And that's why I was okay, lead scoring is great, but the model is actually just great for proving your arguments and to showing like the data. But I want to keep going because it's actually pretty interesting. So not only was it the demo requests or contact sales converting better at like the highest grade, like A, it was actually from A all the way down to like D. And actually
And
the
explain
best,
the grades again.
yeah, so
So
the A, B, C, D is based on the demographic score. So how much points they're getting demographically for fit wise. So are they what we think is our ICP?
mm-hmm.
And actually the best converting right now is our B level, which is also interesting that it's not A. But that also could be down to volume where
Right.
that B level actually has more volume. So you gotta still use your noggin when you're looking at this data. But so the conversion rates that we're seeing for those levels is like minimum like 24% all the way up to, for some of the business units, like 50% or like 40%. We split out the different business units and each kind of have different metrics, but it's still really high. Now, on the flip side, though, what we see is anyone who doesn't fall into that really high behavior, which is like normally our contact sales range, the conversion rates start dropping drastically, like down to 3%, 2%, 4%. Sometimes like just like not even converting really outside of that range. It'll just go to like 0 or 1%. So that is really saying something. Like shit, and I want marketers to maybe think about this too, is like we're always wondering, okay, if we only send people who are ready to talk to us to sales, are we missing out on someone? Are we missing out on something? You could be, for sure. And if it's a target account strategy, maybe you send those to an outbound rep. But if you're actually more focused on taking those people in those other ranges and just trying to engage them more with marketing, it's likely they're going to be ready at some point and they're going to reach out to you, and giving them a lot of ways to do that, inviting them to events and webinars and, having them listen to your podcast. Like all of that is just more and more engagement to get them ready to talk to you. And I was actually thinking about this this morning when I was working out, which is why I'm glad we talked about this morning. I was like, that just makes sense, right? Like it just kind of just makes sense. Like and you won't really be missing out. Like you give enough chances for them to reach out to you, but it's actually just a better experience rather than what's happening right now is someone's just trying to do some research. You send them directly to sales, they hassle them. It's like, okay, instead of hassling them, just send them more content, engage them more, invite them to more things. Like that's a better experience than like, okay, let's send them to an SDR who's just going to call and hassle them. And then now you've kind of lost them. So I just want to point out, like, are you missing? And it's like, okay, why do lead scoring anyway? It's like, well, it helps us see, are we missing out on anyone? Are we not? If maybe we do also MQL a few other ranges of behavior, but the lower ones, like we just don't even bother with. So maybe it's just A1, A2, A3, A, some of the A's, but then B's, that's like a B1 and C1 and D1 and just those, So it gives you the flexibility to like keep flexing those ranges of who you send over to sales. But at some point, it might be, okay, we just send over contact sales. But there is one thing that we also noticed about contact sales, which is quite interesting, is that not only are they converting the best to SALs or to opportunities, but they actually have a really high disqualification rate. And so that's from MQL straight to disqualify. And that means that they're just not the right fit. So at that point, we're like, okay, well, are we seeing any trends? And it's actually been really hard to nail down are there any consistencies or trends between who is getting disqualified? And so this is where it becomes more of an open conversation, is like, what do you do at that point? Like, your model's kind of, what else do you add to your model? You can't see any trends, right? Data and modeling is all about what trends can we pick up to then take out those false positives. And it was hard. We really can't. We saw maybe a little bit of a correlation to a personal domain, but for one business unit, we're already taking all of those out and they can't MQL. And we're kind of scratching our heads, and we actually went back to, okay, maybe this is a user experience problem. Because when you do go to the client's website, all you see is you see different contact sales pages. And it's a contact page, and there's not very many other pages to like reach out. They don't have a chat bot really for that you can engage with. They don't even have like a, reach out to customer success or something like that. And there's different ways that you can engage with this company. They have a more web-enabled sales model, and they also have an enterprise motion. So you can tell as a user that maybe they'd be going to the website and abusing the form to maybe try and get information but not really interested in talking to sales for a demo.
Can you explain more? Because I think explain more about this, because you mentioned, so what you're seeing is that a lot of the content, it wasn't it for a specific leap grade as well that was just becoming disqualified? And can you explain for those that don't know what disqualified means, like explain why that's important, and what does disqualified mean in this context?
Yeah, disqualified means that they're like sent back from sales, and it's like, this is not a fit. Like, they'll never be a fit. So not only like they're not being sent to nurture, they're just saying like, this person's like a consumer, like individual type person, not really looking for the company, which I know a lot of companies maybe deal with, especially depending on if they're like, open source and things like that. Or they're just junk. Like they maybe got targeted with like an ad and maybe didn't realize that it's just not what they're looking for. And so it just really means like they are just, on the flip side, they're not an opportunity, and they never will be, really.
So I think the important thing to call out is like being like super clear about that. So like what you're saying is, the stuff that we've talked about a lot, and a lot of people talk about it, it's like, why are we MQLing? Like all of this other stuff, like build the business case. It's very easy to build once you have lead grade and you can really understand like what you're sending to sales. And then it's likely you're going to probably wean off the non kind of very specific, I'm reaching out to sales type, MQLs or type of inbound requests. Mm-hmm. But then what you're seeing now is that even in those, it's almost like a binary outcome where it's either almost 50%. I know it's 30%, but or a lot of people are either going straight into an opportunity because they are literally ready to buy, mm-hmm. or they're just completely not the right fit. There isn't really like that nuance in the middle, which is like someone reaching out to sales to say, but then they're not quite ready. And I think that intuitively makes sense too, right? Because if someone's reaching out to sales, and it's likely they are, they've already got some kind of need or a business case and they're ready to like start a proper conversation. And that's where the opportunity gets created. And I think for this client, when you say SAL, you mean opportunity being created. Yeah. So like a serious sales conversation. So for that, it makes sense. Like, okay, someone reaching out immediately, there's a deal. But then what you're saying is that there's a lot of junk that comes through that too. So you've got to be careful, because if your perspective is that everything that comes through my demo request and my contact sales goes to sales, and they have to like seriously follow up on them, it's not like, and say you turn off the other MQLs, it's not like that is just perfect either, because it's like there's still going to be some crap in there that you need to filter through. And so I think where it'd be interesting to talk about next is, how do you do that? Because there's a lot of ways to do that. Because again, all we're trying to really do is ultimately we want the conversion rate of like what we send to sales to opportunity to be 100%.
Right.
It's never going to be 100%, but like if it is 100%, then we know we are the most efficient and effective marketing SDR sales team ever, because everything that we're telling them is ready is actually ready, and it turns into an opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the biggest bang for buck there is turning off or like reducing some of the obviously ready leads. But then there's still an opportunity for those that seem ready, because often there's a lot of junk that comes through. And like the point that you made, it's not like some of them are coming through who are just not ready yet. It's like those that are coming through that don't turn into an opportunity are usually just not a good fit at all.
Yeah.
And will never be an opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's like they're definitely an opportunity or they're never an opportunity. So it'd be good. How do we figure out what to do to still not waste sales time with that type of follow up?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing to look at before we even talk about like what you can do on the front end to help this junk from coming in is we looked at actually the source, like where is there a correlation between where these demo requests or contact sales are coming from. And we actually saw that there was a campaign that was probably targeting and pulling in the wrong people. So we looked at the UTMs and were able to see, oh, there's this paid campaign and it was bringing in a ton of these people that were getting disqualified. So we made that change really quickly with the paid team, where they turned off some of those campaigns. There's a trickle effect to that though, because sometimes like some of those depending on the targeting might change, but that helped us at least identify, okay, one source that was actually a marketing source for bringing in these people that were the wrong fit. And actually you see that a lot. Even when I worked in demand gen, I saw that a lot, like especially for paid ads. As something you really want to focus on is not only are you creating opportunities, but are any of these leads being disqualified, and is it tied to a certain campaign? Because it could be that the keyword is specific or to like not bringing in the right people, and we saw that, and then I've seen that before too. Or your targeting is a bit off; it's too broad. Don't go too broad. Even if your agency is touting, oh, we have this low CPL, well, a ton of that is shit. So doesn't matter. But so we made that change. But besides that, everyone else was kind of coming like direct or from more organic sources. So we thought, okay, I think this actually has to do more from like an experience standpoint, because what we were seeing is a lot of people that were filling out that form were actually without saying this I want to keep it anonymized, but we're actually interested in a different like product, really. And also, so we helped the team that sells to enterprises, and this was clearly their pages for selling to enterprises. And then also they have another that sells to university and campuses, and it's very clear. But there's certain people at those companies where maybe they're just individuals who want to use it, and they're going to these forums and abusing it. So we're like, okay, let's try and ask on the forum, because sometimes you can do the best you can from looking at titles, but that's really hard when everyone's titles are different. You're a global company, you're accounting for translations, and some people lie too. But so this is where we're at right now, is like kind of figuring out, okay, is there anything that we can ask upfront on the form? And a lot of people are like, oh, you have to add fields to your forms. If you're going to add fields to any form, it should be a form to try and get contacted. Like take away all the rest of your forms. I don't care. Like, but take away those hoops. But if you want to put in a few hoops for people to jump through, for them to get in contact with sales or to set a meeting, this is your time to figure out, is it the right person? And also, what do they want to meet on? Because then that actually like makes that experience even better for the prospect. Like you're ready to like help them and send them to the right place.
I think in marketing, we're often trying to reduce friction, aren't we?
Right.
And that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the downside of sometimes reducing friction is that in these important touch points where we're trying to, really get engaged with people who are ready to buy and have like a very streamlined process, is that a lot of junk then ends up coming through. So I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't be afraid of adding a little bit of friction, because if someone they have been, educated enough, they've read your content, listened to your podcast, you've gone to whatever they've done, and they are, there, and they are ready to speak to a salesperson. An extra field on that form isn't going to make them go, I'm not going to work with this company anymore.
No.
So if it does, then they're not actually ready.
No.
So obviously, I'm not saying let's not have a 50 field form. That would be
Right.
crazy. But having a little bit more detail in that. One client that we've been talking to, that I think they had a really good idea, where you have kind of the main fields on the form, and then you have an obvious like next section part of the form, and you even just be like super clear and say, we're asking for this extra information. It's optional, but it will help us direct you to the right person, have the right conversation when we speak to sales. And there was like other more detailed fields, which then gathered the information, which are really useful operationally, because I think they were using a lot of that for like routing to the right region and the right rep and the right tier and everything like that. But then also giving the rep a lot more of the useful context to curate a much better sales experience. So don't be afraid to add more to that form. It's going to help more than hinder.
Totally. And you can change your experience beyond that. So a lot of the times, like, well, we're going to have to follow up with these people. Yes, because they're requesting to be contacted, but you can actually say they're a customer. Like they tell you that they're a current customer. You can then point them to a thank you page that says like, fill out a support ticket here or reach out here. If you were doing this through a chat bot, you would still give those same options, but maybe direct them to someone else. Or if you were using a direct booking experience, instead of booking a meeting, then they can reach out to support, or you book a meeting with a support person. So, and then alternatively, if you just really can't sell to them and you know that up front, then that's your time to say, thanks for getting in contact with us. We actually we don't sell to people in your region or people, you're actually an individual. So why don't you go try out our product for free here? And so then you're redirecting them somewhere. But you don't have to worry about setting up, sales, following up with them, figuring out, oh, do we set up an automated cadence for that? You're actually like doing some of that like guidance up front. And then if you do want to use something like a meeting book or like a chili paper, you can handle all of that. And then based on the information you do know, and you're like, this is a great prospect, you can then send them directly to book a meeting, which is essentially what you want to do anyway. And that could even improve your conversion rate even more, because now they're not going through this whole song and dance of like requesting, someone reaching out to them. Or can you meet this time? Oh, my reps, so it does that. And then also, if do you have an SDR team, but you still want to send some of those leads directly to sales, you can then figure out, okay, what are the different people, or based on what they say they want to talk about, you can then send them directly to an SDR, or you can send them directly to sales. So even asking them like, what they want to talk about, do they want to see the product? Do they want to talk about like a certain use case? Whatever it might be, like it depends on the client. That's actually a good time. And then that'll change how you treat that lead.
So what are some of the other takeaways you've had with this client specifically? And what are some things that have worked really well when you've been refining the sales ready process and scoring and grading and everything like that?
I think one thing is like really taking a crawl, walk, run approach. So we didn't come in hot and be like, this is dumb, you should just send them a request to sales. We just said, okay, this company has really big goals to hit. They're moving to this new way of thinking and looking at conversion, right? Let's take their goal and let's build a model to try and help them at least achieve that first goal. And we did a really good job. There were some learnings and hiccups at the beginning where people were nervous. They were like, our lead volume's down. SDR managers were like, why are these people not MQLing? My team should be following up with them. And that threw us a bit off guard because like, wouldn't you want your team to follow up with less? But so we did make a little bit of a slight adjustment and started MQLing a level that we didn't want to with our modeling. And we saw it brought down our conversion rate. And so then it became okay, well, we did our part, but this team wanted this change and we made it and everyone agreed on it. And this was the impact. So we actually were still able to report okay, don't include those leads and let's use that conversion rate. So that was a little bit where you kind of take 2 steps forward, a little tiny step back, but then use the model to then prove that you're right. So that was one thing. But then the crawl, walk, run, walk thing is it's iterative. So reviewing it every 3 months has really made us able to bring insights into what can be changed. And
how do you structure that meeting? Because I think ultimately that's one of the best takeaways from this, is because once you set up the tracking and you have the data and the data model there to be able to look at the different things you need to look at to improve and optimize this process. The trick is then actually using that data and over time iteratively improving. So how do you structure that meeting? Who's on that meeting? How often do you have that meeting? Who presents on that? Give us all the details on how you figure that out.
Well, it's a little bit different when a consultant or an agency is running the data for you. So we go and run all that data, and then we present the data, but also our recommendations. Not all recommendations are going to be done.
And what data? Give us an example of some of the slides on there and what you're showing.
Yeah, so we'll have the raw data in a Google spreadsheet where we'll actually show all of our lead grades and which ones are actually MQLing in green in a matrix. And then we show MQL to SQL, disqualified, and MQL to SAL. We actually show for each grade what's the percentage to MQL to SQL conversion rate, what percentage of those MQLs are disqualifying, and then what percentage are turning into SALs, which is a active opportunity. So really in pipeline. And then we break that out and we also show the volume. So we can actually also reference volume, because sometimes your conversion rate will be high, but the volume will be low. And so just looking at that is our baseline of data. And then we'll kind of highlight things that we see. And then we've either had conversations about it, but normally we have a few slides where then we'll talk about our findings per business unit, what we're seeing in the data. And then we'll have a summarized recommended changes that we should do. And these are always just recommendations. It doesn't mean that we say, oh, client, you need to do all of this, but it opens up those conversations and open up everyone oh, maybe we should be thinking about that. And the client brings in a lot of good commentary too, because we're not experts into what's going on day to day. So that's one good thing about our point of contact is she is constantly meeting with a team called the Demand Council, which has a mix of demand gen, SDR, web team, I think maybe is on in her, and they will talk about what they're seeing. She'll bring those insights as well, because if you're hearing pain points, it's a lot of the time our data is proving that why we're having some of those pain points. And we're doing the best we can to address those. And that's been the biggest thing is people are oh, well, we're still seeing some leads come through contact sales that aren't a good fit. And it's we've kind of exhausted where we should go with this, also appeasing the demand gen team who's I don't want you to not to not send good people over to SDRs too, because I want to make sure my leads are converting. And so that's where it opened up the conversation of like, maybe it's not a lead scoring thing. Maybe it's also like, how do we handle that? Like, at the front end. And that's where we're at right now. Like, we haven't made any of those changes. We're now just working with that team to then suggest, okay, what's a mock-up of what that experience would look like, and get everyone like thinking through if that should be implemented.
Yeah, I think that is something that really any marketing ops person listening to this, rev ops person, whatever, they can do tomorrow, right? If you're able to track, if you've got the the data and tracking set up, obviously. If you do, go and have a look, do that analysis, create a deck, and present it to the team on how you think you can improve, and that's instantly providing value. Like, if you increase the conversion rate, not only are you potentially impacting pipeline creation and positively, impacting that, you're also positively impacting the SDR team, making them happier, making them more effective, helping with sales and marketing alignment, because they're getting less pissed off about the leads being sent. So bang for buck, it's a really good use of your time, and it's a really good way to like elevate yourself in the role and make yourself be more of a change agent to improve what the company's doing.
Right.
And we talk about that. We've been talking about that for years, right? Like, marketing ops, you're so close. You're closer to the data than anyone else usually. You should be there drawing insights out of that data.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to find the time to do that, but you really should try and push yourself. And this is one way out of probably 100 ways you can do that. But it's probably one of the most impactful and just obvious ways you can improve the business, because it's like such an area that is in so many companies, it's like done quite poorly, like in terms of what's being sent to sales. So you can, and they're not iterating on it, and you could really show a massive improvement, right? It'd be quite easy to show a massive improvement. There's other areas where like you're eking out like a percent. You could improve conversion rates by like 30%, right? By just like one change in this. And think of all the the positive impact that would create.
Totally. Yeah. And you don't have to have your lead scoring model even. Like, you could even do what you're talking about. Like, look at all your contact sales leads, and are there a percentage of them disqualifying? Why? Is it like some of the user experience? Are you getting some junk through their customers? Like, start with some of those basics, and like you said, suggest the changes. And if you don't if you don't have that, what's going to happen to you too is like people will come to you with changes, and they might not be the right ones. It'll be like scoring sucks,
or they'll just come to you with frustrations.
Right. And so, yeah. So that's my last thing, is like taking that proactive approach can actually prevent your teams from leading everyone astray too, because they're not close to the data. They're not seeing it. They're just making assumptions, which aren't always right.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our deep dive into this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or I'm happy to answer them. And if you like this episode of Forward Thinking, feel free to share it with your colleagues and friends, and maybe also leave us a review. Well, it was good having you back, Charlie.
Thank you. We'll have to do
it again.
Everyone,
have a good one.